How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
Welcome to another edition of the Tactical Empire. Today, I'm here with Sean Ryder, and we are about to have an amazing show. What's up, man?
Whoa, with that low tone voice. He's been working on his movie trailer voice, and he was bringing it in on the Tactical Empire intro there, Jeff. What?
Yeah, I don't know where it was. I have had nasal issues for the better part of the last 3 weeks, so maybe it was that.
Listen. We're gonna be assholes today. We're gonna talk about first world problems where 10% of the world population, that is 700 million people, live on less than $2 a day. That's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about first world problems, and it's going to revolve around getting your first $100,000. As the old and late Charlie Munger, who passed away a couple months ago at the age of 99, he's famous for many reasons, but one of his most repeated quotes is that you have to get that first 100,000. Getting that first 100,000 is the toughest to earn. And that sounds ridiculous to anyone that may not have thought of that before. If they're trying to rub two nickels together and pay their bills, I get it. But we're surrounded by a lot of people, especially in the United States. There's a lot of money flowing around. There's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of people that are willing to pay people of value. When you put value into the world, listen, the exchange of money is the exchange of value. The exchange of money is the exchange of value. If you want more money, you have to add more value into the world. If you haven't gotten your first 100,000, that has got to be a financial goal. Okay. And we're going to talk about reasons why that's important. What happens after you hit that marker and why is it important? But Jeff, how'd you like that intro? 700 million people live on $2 a day, and we're going to talk about $100,000.
Yeah, I was trying to wrap my head around $2 a day. And then I was thinking that I'm already retired if I want to move to any of those countries.
Yeah, hell yeah, let's go. You'd be the king of the powwow, the powwow crew.
No, yeah, I mean this is an interesting topic, and it's a good one because people need to understand it because I wholeheartedly believe, I don't know if your first 100,000 is your hardest to make, but it's definitely your first million's fucking the hardest to make. I can assure you that. So it's the same exact thing at scale. So I'm sure that your first 100,000 is hard to get your feet under you with, because people don't understand unsecured debt and how debt affects you. And then like your money mindset and the disciplines that you have to produce money and then keep money, which are two vastly different things.
Oh man, you're nailing it right there. I say there's 3 skills of money. 1, get money. 2, keep money. 3, multiply money. And they're all different skills. If you only have, if you have the first one, you're get money, you're going to get, or let's say earn, you're going to earn your first 100,000 fairly quickly, but that doesn't mean you've kept 100,000. So I think Charlie's quote was like earning that first 100,000. But I think realistically what he meant was being able to save and set aside 100,000. Yeah. Once you have 100,000, then you can multiply it. So that's a 3-step progress: get, keep, earn. And those are 3 different skill sets. And you have to level up your knowledge as you go along in each of those foundational skills. And again, once you hit 100,000, then you're working at scale. So Jeff, back in your court.
Well, I think so let's just focus on the first part, which is get it, right?
Yep.
And I think that people undervalue the importance of skill acquisition. And like, if you look at corporate jobs or you look at the school system and you look at like college, it teaches you like rote memorization and repetition. And then you go into a workforce where you don't really have the challenges of actual thought. You do the same thing over and over again on a regular basis, and you're rewarded exactly like everybody else. And so people settle into that and then distract themselves with everything else going on in the world. And they do not understand that skill acquisition is a lifelong journey and something that you should be pursuing on a daily basis, because you're talking about you're paid an equivalent to the value you put into the world. Um, how can you possibly put more value in if you're not improving your skills? And
Mhm.
when I say that, that means literally anything. Like, so don't get caught up in like, how do you acquire a skill like metalwork or something like that? It can be, I mean, most people in the US at this point are paid for knowledge. At this, like 70% of people are paid for like, I can't even remember what the term is called, but it's thinking, if you will. And so knowledge acquisition is skill acquisition, right? So that's reading books, watching YouTube videos, picking up skills. And I harp on this all the time, but there's never been a time in history when there's more information available to you for free than ever. And
Mhm.
so, like, I cannot beat the drum enough on skill acquisition, because in my mind, and anyone that comes and asks me, you'll never hear me say anything else. Like, if you have $50,000 to invest in something, you need to invest in yourself,
Mm.
because like you don't need to go buy a house, like you don't need to go buy a rental property. I mean, and things like that at that point in time. Now, you could use 10 of it to invest in yourself and go get a mentor or a coach or something like that, and then use the other 40 to buy your first rental property. Because then you're acquiring skills in two different ways. You're getting education, and then you're getting the actual real tuition, which is like the life practical application of going out and doing it. And so underestimate skill acquisition when it comes to how do you get to the $100,000. And then there's a lot of work to be done on keeping it, because of our money mindset issues that have been ingrained in us since we were young people.
Yeah, no doubt. I think people need to. I love that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit on how I respond to it from a foundational level. Is like people need to understand where they're starting from. I don't care how old you are, 25, 35, 45, 55. If you haven't hit your first 100,000, it's just, you have no clue where you're at. You need to understand where you're at. I was 22 years old when I graduated college and got my first teaching job. My first year, my salary was $35,000 before taxes. Of course, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. So when I transitioned to 23 years old, early in that first school year, I'm making 35 grand. I was setting aside $1,500 minimum that I wasn't spending. So while my earning capacity was low, because I wasn't doing anything else at that time in my first year of teaching, so I was getting money, it just wasn't maximized. So I didn't understand that I could make more outside of teaching at that time. I was focused on my starting my teaching career. I was really good at keeping money. So I had that second skill set, keeping money. And so even at that rate, $1,500 a month, that's $18,000 a year saved. If I would have kept that trajectory, all else created equal, I would have had 100,000 in about 5.5 years. Right. So I would have earned that first 100,000 or set aside that first 100,000 by the age of 27, 28. Right. It took about that long, but there are a lot of factors there. After 5 years, I left teaching and went into the gym business full time. But at that time, right when I crossed that threshold, so it actually did take me about 5.5 years. The first time I had a conversation with you, I think I was 29. So I was sitting on $100,000 for about a year before I came and met you virtually. And I tell this story often on social media, but for you new listeners, it's the very first phone call I ever had with Jeff. To circle back to what he said was, we got on that call. There were no pleasantries, by the way. We got on the call. He said, "Hey, I'm Jeff." I said, "Hey, I'm Sean." And the next thing he said was, "What's your problem?" Well, okay, right to it. That's awesome. And I literally said, this is why I started the podcast with what I said. The first thing I said was, "Well, this is a first world problem, but this is the first time I've ever had $100,000 sitting in a bank account, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't want it in the stock market, and I don't want to keep it in a bank." And so going back to what Jeff said about investing in yourself, that was the first time that, one, I had to invest in mentorship, a higher level mentorship group. And two, he said the term infinite banking for the first time. And I'm not going to fall down that rabbit hole, but I had to sorry, let me rephrase that. I had to learn about that system. And that's what I'm saying to reinforce what Jeff said about investing in my knowledge. Because I don't take action unless I have some sort of knowledge in the area. If someone tells me to invest in something, I'm not just going to throw my money in it. The downside is I took a little while to put my money into a life insurance policy, but I educated myself. Now, I didn't pay someone to educate me in that realm, but I spent 9 months. So I had to take the time to learn, to reestablish that foundation. And that's what Jeff's saying here. So yeah, you might have set aside 50 grand, but if you haven't reinvested a sliver of that into your skill set, which again, if 70% of people get paid for their knowledge, well, you need to go acquire some knowledge. So yeah, take your 50, dwindle it down to 30 or 40 to reinvest in yourself. And then the compounding interest, that curve is going to start to get a little steeper because now you're a totally different asset, right? We say it, you are the asset. So invest in yourself, then you got that compounding of knowledge, skill set acquisition. You're going to be doing things a little bit differently. When you do things differently, you're going to hopefully yield results at a faster pace. And that's where you go from being a $35,000 a year teacher to you're blinking and 10 years later, you own $5.5 million of real estate. That may not be your path, but that's how the fuck you get there. That's how you get there. Jeff, back at you.
Well, I mean, don't be scared off because Sean took you from a $50 million or $50,000 investment to a $30,000 in your bank account.
That's usually Jeff's job.
You don't have to do that. I mean, the books that I recommended to you are free, I think, at this point. And then there's countless YouTube videos. We have a pile of YouTube videos on it. We have a ton of content on infinite banking. And so you could have done that for zero. So you could have spent 9 months, which is opportunity cost, but you could have spent 9 months acquiring skills, knowledge, and understanding of a product, and which is what you did. And look how it paid off for you, though.
Well, I remember it to this day. It's when we had our first child, and my wife our first child, love her to death, but that first 2.5 years, bedtime routine was horrendous. And so my wife was at the forefront of that. So I remember to this day that my wife would be upstairs for an hour, hour and a half, because I couldn't be anywhere close to that baby. She wouldn't let me anywhere close. Not she, the baby wouldn't let me close. My wife wanted me to come in, but there was no way I was going to make it worse. She'd be upstairs for bedtime routine and I'd be watching YouTube videos on infinite banking.
Yeah.
To learn about it. Every night, man. The playlist was infinite banking videos. Some of them were 5 minutes, some of them were 30 minutes, but it was every night for 9 months. And I read all the books, of course.
Yeah. And so that's a good example. And then what are groups for? If you want to fast track it, shit, for $297 a month, you could give us $297 and jump into the Tactical Empire. You get an entire library of shit on this, and you get access to me and Sean to talk to you about it.
Yeah, let's go.
You could compress his 9 months into 1 month and have people that will hold your hand through the entire process for $300. So then you'd have 49,900 or 700 still to invest. But not to do a shameless plug for our group, but the point stands on how you do this. The next thing to do, though, and that you need to understand is you have to understand that you can't abdicate your financial responsibility. That's where people fall short all the time on this, because to your point, you're a teacher, you're probably investing some stupid amount of money in your 403B. Because
stupid amount, you mean $80 a month?
Oh, well, sorry,
bro.
But most people, I would say the majority of people that go to work, do their job, do their stuff, they don't want to fuck with this stuff. And so they're like, a 401k is what we're supposed to do. So I'm going to put all my money in a 401k. And if I max it out, I am doing what a prudent saver and a responsible individual would do with their money. And the max is, I have no idea what it is today, 22,000.
Yeah, 20-some thousand.
And if you do that, you're better than like 97% of society anyway. So
Sure.
like now we can just fucking park 22 grand in there and call it good. And like I have now handled my financial obligation.
Never look at it, Jeff. Put it in there for the next 40 years and don't even look at it because it's fucking scary when you look at it. You guys should be looking at it. It's not doing what you think it's doing. Sorry.
Yep. But to your point, like I would much rather have $100,000 in cash that I can do something with than $400,000 in my 401k.
That's right. I think that's hell yeah. Sorry. God, now we're getting fired up. I didn't think we'd go here. Like, I think that's the new status symbol. Like, now, don't get me wrong. You guys, if you follow our content, you hear me say you shouldn't have money in a bank. I also, in the same breath, say you shouldn't have 3 to 6 months of emergency fund, but having access, that's the key word, access and control over $100,000, to me, that's the new status symbol. I don't give a fuck about your 6-month emergency fund. Like, I don't give a shit about your 401k. I don't care about your income. The person who was I don't care about your paid off fucking house. Who was in a better position in March of 2020? The world shut down. The person who has made overpayments on a 30-year or 15-year fixed rate mortgage and they weren't paid off yet, and the person that put 22 grand in a 401k and had almost nothing in the bank, or the person that had $100,000 in a bank, and our bank is a high early cash value life insurance policy, to be clear, that we could access, that person who had access to money slept well at night during the lockdowns. That is important. And so that's a vital point that Jeff made there. You think that you're doing things. And again, if you put money in a 401k, you are ahead of a lot of people. All it takes, like Google, the average retirement balance of each age level, right? The average 20-year-old has like 5 grand in a 401k. The average 30-year-old has like 15 grand. The average 50-year-old who's 10 years away from retirement, they don't have that much money in 401ks. They are going to be hurting for certain. And so you think you're doing the right thing. You are ahead of a lot of people if you got half decent funds in there. But if you can't touch them, do not abdicate financial responsibility. Take some time, watch some YouTube videos, invest in groups. Jeff told you about ours. Get access to people that are hands reach away from their capital. Now, no matter how you do that, let's say you finally get to that 100,000, Jeff. Now what? Why was that number so fucking important? Now what are they going to do? Potentially. Learn more.
Well, yeah. I mean, you become a different person when you're able to work with 6-figure deals. I mean, like the deals just change. Like, that's why people say they're not really that different or more complex. There's just different amounts of zeros on the end, because you have to be able to steward that money along at that level. And a lot of times it's mostly just mental. Like, if you see $1,000 in your checking account and it fucking makes you giddy and excited and it's all spent by Monday morning, like, when you have $100,000 in there, the outcome's not going to be any different probably. And so you have to really regulate your behaviors and your discipline and things like that. And it should be broke up. I mean, you should have some, like we talk about buy box when it comes to real estate investing, you should have some rules of investments for yourself. My family does sweep accounts. And so we sweep money into individual accounts based on what we're comfortable with and where we've broken it down for that particular year or quarter. And the money just goes into those accounts. Like, this is a forever account. You don't ever touch it. It's long-term, steady Eddie investment stuff. Then we got medium shit. Then we got risky stuff. And so at that point, if you have $100,000, you're probably at the point where you need to create some rules around how your money operates in your system.
Yeah. Yeah. We got little rules too, man. Like, got away from the traditional mindset of 6 months worth of expenses. Then when I started creating businesses, it was very easy for me to say, hey, I need 6 to 12 months worth of expenses because who knows what the emergency is going to be. But now that I have a better control on the financial flow, cash flow of the businesses, I just pump and dump, man. I hoard cash for 60 to 90 days. And then I sweep it at that point. So within those first 60 to 90 days, like if something does come up, I do have the cash there. But after that, man, it is a sweep account. I sweep it out and I move it into either my life insurance premiums, paying back my life insurance policy loans, or if there's more money flowing towards me and my wife via all of our businesses, at that point, that's where I expand my system. So you do create these rules for yourself. One rule of thumb from an investing perspective is I do not invest any more than 5% of my net worth in anything that I don't understand. So this would be your speculative type of investments. If I don't understand it, it's not getting more than 5% of my portfolio. I did put money in the crypto market, when it was riding up. I would be lying if I told you I understood what the hell I was doing. But I followed that rule and thank God I did. Right. I think I ended up getting to about 3% of my net worth was in crypto. And then it went really far down and then it's built its way back up a little bit. And, depending on the type of account it was in, I either had access to it or I didn't, because some of those companies didn't turn out too hot, did they? That's how you can start putting yourself in a better position. Again, you have to be stable. Your foundation has to be strong before you move on and start doing these other things. And again, the knowledge skill sets, like you need to expand your knowledge, but like the things that Jeff does with money is the same things that people that maybe not make as much money should be doing, right? We're being stewards of money. We are not abdicating financial responsibility. I'm so happy that you said that, because that's something that we used to say all the time on the podcast. I feel like we haven't brought it up in a while, but financial abdication is how you start losing money, because you're losing eyeballs. Where your eyes are is what you're going to see more of. That's why it looks like our country's in disarray, because so many eyeballs are on all the shit that's going on and they're not focusing. That's why we talk about wins, man. Like, we want to hear your wins. No matter how shitty, you had a great post in the inner circle. Like, you admitted some of the shit that happened in the past 7 days in your life, but you also at the same time acknowledge all the good things, right? So if you're abdicating financial responsibility and not looking at your money because that's what your grandpa told you to do, because in 40 years, you're going to have $1.5 million because you set aside 2 pennies every single month and compound interest, the math works out that way. Like, you're probably not going to get to where you're actually trying to go. That's my point. That's my point for the day. What do you need to do to get to 100,000? Fucking do it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's cash flow and access to cash are the most important things. So if I had $100,000 and it was my first $100,000 ever, I would strategically look at making prudent investments to start multiplying that money somehow. Start making that money go to work for you. And then where are you comfortable at? Right. So like regular money market accounts now are like 5%, but 2 years ago, those were at like 1.5%. Mm-hmm. So you have to get more education so that you are able to expose yourself to a little more sophistication without the risk. And so, and there's no such thing as no risk, but like you can, through learning about different assets, different opportunities, different networking groups, stuff like that, you can expose yourself to things that are not necessarily risky, but are more than 5%, right? In today's climate, if you have $100,000 sitting in your savings account, even if you're making 5% in a savings account interest, like you're losing money. That dollar is devaluing at a faster rate than it's earning interest, because 5% is not what the increase of inflation is pacing right now. No matter what they say on the news, it's not true. So you, from an obligation standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a person that's taking charge of your household standpoint, you need to learn this stuff so that you can figure out how to make 7, 8, 9, 17%, so that you can outpace all of that stuff, so that your money isn't just sitting there dying. And you don't want it to disappear, of course, but like that comes with financial education. You can make more prudent decisions. You can do more work with the money and get it working for you at a faster rate. And so, I mean, I think it's a good conversation, but like, I think that they're just at their starting point when they hit their $100,000. The idea is how do you split it and make it multiply like atoms? Okay. We're splitting atoms. So how do you take $100,000 and split it into a few different investments and make it come out with 120 total? Because that's ultimately kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to save some of it. You're trying to protect a bunch of it. That's why we like infinite banking so much. We don't need to go down that road, but like that secures your investment with an interest rate and a long-term death benefit as well. So like, then you start there, then you do the education, then you invest again, and you've got that money working for you more than once.
Let me ask a clarifying question, and maybe it's a challenge you type question. When you say split the atoms, I want to make sure people are clear. Someone may have some basic personal finance knowledge. They're like, oh, he's talking about splitting atoms, so he's talking about diversification. Do you think people, and I'm saying that's what people may think you're talking about, I'm going to let you answer it for yourself. Do you think people should be diversifying their investments? I want to give you a chance to specify what you mean there, because I think people have a very elementary definition of diversification and what the true purpose of diversification means. And I'm not so sure that's what you actually mean.
I don't mean that at all.
That's right.
I like going an inch wide and a mile deep.
There we go.
And
go for it. That's why I'm asking the question, because I don't want people to think we're talking about put 20 grand in crypto, 20 grand in the stock market, 20 grand here, 20 grand there. And that's diversification, because that's what we said is the way to build wealth.
Sean, that's why I only do three things, because I'm fucking just not smart enough or not sophisticated enough or whatever it is. I don't know. But all I do is life insurance, real estate, and businesses. And that's all I put my money in, all of it. It all goes into life insurance first. Then it either goes into real estate or I invest in other businesses. And I can't have enough knowledge on those three subjects. But what that allows me to do is go that mile deep on those subjects. I know a fuckload about real estate. I know a lot about life insurance. I know a lot about businesses. I have 18 years experience in two of those areas, real estate and business. And I have I don't know how many years experience in life insurance.
Yep. Yeah. So
that's
the point.
I wish I had 44.
Well, then you'd be closer to death. Or it just means you started sooner. But who starts real estate investing at 16? The people who are getting connected with us. We got a 21, 22-year-old in the group. No, I'm glad that I asked that question, because that's the point is, do you become wealthy by diversifying? I believe the answer is no. You become wealthy by specializing, and then you can maintain wealth by diversifying. But
you could, to our point of where we started this conversation, you have multiple vertices of being able to be paid if you follow that model, right? Because people pay me for my knowledge about those sources. So I invest in assets in the business space. I invest in real estate as an asset, and then people pay me for my knowledge in real estate, and they pay me for my knowledge in businesses and also life insurance, right? And so that's kind of the way you want to do it. Yeah. And
so to me, the way I explained it, because people might follow me on social and they're like, well, Sean's doing all these different things. If they talk to me, I said, yeah, it looks like different things, but they're all complementary to one another because it's a system.
Yep.
They are stacked upon each other. And even though, so even like there's diversification within specialization. So I'm in real estate, but 65, 70% is a commercial building. And the other 30, 40% are 3 short-term rentals. And now I'm about to put money in my first, it's not a syndication, but group investment deal in a storage unit.
Yep.
Right. So all of that is backed by real estate, but it's different types of real estate. And so I can utilize the same lessons from specializing in a diversified strategy. Now, I know the argument there is like, if someone invests in numerous stocks, are they diverse? Well, it's all still the stock market. But again, I like having asset backed investments, not paper backed investments.
Well, your next step that you're taking is actually like a baller step, because you're turning into a lender. And that is ultimately where most investors want to end up. Like every
Thanks for
real
educating
estate.
me. What am I doing? Educate me on what I'm doing.
So you're carrying paper that's
right.
backed by assets. Most of us spend our middle investment career where I'm at, which is acquiring at where you're at too, acquiring assets, and we're working actively in our real estate portfolio, building it, right? And then you don't fully exit that space really ever. But what those guys, the upper echelon of real estate investors and things like that have been doing it for years, you see they're writing a lot more notes. They're carrying a lot more paper that's then backed by the middle guys' assets, because what they're doing is essentially exactly what you do in business. And they're going out and getting the operators that are actively doing the deals. They're carrying the notes on these particular deals through fruition, and they're making the interest on those notes. But that's true passive income, and it's just backed by an asset that they clearly understand. So that's where the next level of your knowledge will come into play, because you're able to evaluate a deal based on your experience and background and say, that's a solid deal. I'm going to put up my $100,000 that I have, right? But I know for a fact that I could take this thing and sell it at 50 cents on the dollar, and I'm still safe on my $100,000. I will still pull that out because of the deal. And so ultimately, as a lender, like that's where you're just carrying paper in all these different endeavors, and people are that is the ultimate like crescendo of your money making money for you.
Yeah. There's something I want to say there. It's it kind of takes us back a couple steps, so I apologize. But it's like, why are we going to make bigger strides at 100 than $50,000? Why do I have to get to 100? Well, it's simple math. We already said it's the same. It just has more zeros. But let's talk percentages. 5% of 100,000 is greater than 5% of 50,000. And that's why we need you to get to your first 100,000 so you can work at scale. And then when that 100,000, which is still tough to turn into $1 million, 5% of $1 million is much more than 5% of 100,000. So you're just going to work up these levels, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, it takes time. None of us did this overnight. Okay. So we have, a lot of knowledge ourselves, but we don't have all the knowledge. We have access to a lot of smart people in our lives. We have a great group of men that are making all sorts of types of investments. We'd love to have you in the group. Jeff, that's all I have to say on the topic, my man. What you got for the people to head them out?
If I had $100,000, I would take $50,000 of it and leverage it at the rate of about 300,000. I would buy a $300,000 asset, and I would hold that. I would safely sit on my $50,000, and
But what am I going to do when I make $100,000 disappear in this asset that might not return me for the next 3 years? You're going to work your ass off, gain more knowledge, and hopefully add more value into the world, which does what, Jeff? Increases your income. None of you are going to make one investment and then go sit on the beach for the next 20 fucking years. So wrap it around your head. Learn a little bit, invest the money, let it do its job, and then become a more valuable human, and more money will flow into your life. You'll be perfectly fine putting that 100,000 to work, because you're still going to be producing an income for yourself. You're not retiring on the beach at the age of 40. Get past that thought. That's it.
Keep winning. Keep winning.
See you guys next week.